So one of the things that I like to talk about with people is how to properly oil their oboe.
So how often would you recommend that it be oiled?
I look at it and say, if you oil it correctly, you can't oil enough. Okay. Now there's right and wrong ways to oil, and there's ways that are considered right that I don't think are quite as good. And so we'll get into that in another part here. But the big thing is crack prevention with oiling. So we recommend using almond oil.
Okay.
And you can get almond oil in some health food stores. And we apply it with a feather. But oiling your oboe, I recommend generally oiling it in a dry climate once a month.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, because we're just so dry. And as you play the instrument regularly and it gets more broken in, you don't necessarily have to do it quite that rigorously. But some woods are also more susceptible to cracking. So like cocobolo and rosewood and these other type of exotic woods that do have both a aesthetic beauty, but also a different tonality and performance to them, can be more susceptible to cracking. And so on those, I generally look at it and say your upper joint once a week.
Okay.
As long as you're not over applying the oil. And that's where the turkey feather really does best, in my opinion, is that it's only going to give a very light coat to the surface level of the bore rather than a deep soak. And so it won't get up into pads. It won't make sticky pad problems.
Right.
And that's why most oboe shops will tell you turkey feather is the way to do it. Some clarinet shops will go with a pull-through swab. But on an oboe, the bore is so tight that as that swab is pulling through, it can over squeeze oil into the tone holes and get on the surface of your pads, and also runs the risk of getting stuck if you don't pull it through properly. So turkey feathers are generally safe. So we're going to show you that here in just a moment. So with a brand new turkey feather, you're going to need to apply a little bit more oil than you normally would. So this one's a brand new feather. We're going to apply the oil a lot just down the center of the quill on both sides, because we got to get this thing nice and saturated with oil for it to be able to apply. Once you do that initial coating, we're going to run the oil through, and you'll see that turkey feather gets really ugly really quick. But that's okay. Okay, the idea is getting it saturated. When you've used this feather a couple of times, you only need to do a few drops down each side. I usually stay about 4 on each side. That way it's going up and down the entire quill, and you'll just work it through with your fingers to get it nice and in. And since it's almond oil, it'll just go straight in your skin. Nothing wrong with almond oil, unless you're allergic to almonds, in which case, find a different type of oil. So now that you've got your turkey feather nice and oiled up, it's very simple. Just put it straight in and rotate. Now, I generally recommend rotating in one direction the entire time. Don't try and go back and forth. Okay. And you're just trying to get it a nice coat through. When you're done, there's going to be a little bit of excess oil right here at the tenon. If you have a metal tenon, it's not a big deal. You can wipe it off on your hand. If you have a wood tenon, you just rub it in.
Okay.
And so doing that, that will just give you a nice surface layer of the oil on your bore. It's not going to soak deep. This is not penetrating deep. This is just creating a moisture barrier. Now that you're done oiling the bore of your oboe, it's also a good idea to keep the feather clean. So generally we're going to recommend that you keep it in some sort of airtight bag. When we give someone a feather or sell them one, we supply them with this Ziploc style bag to keep the feather free of dirt, dust, and miscellaneous debris. This way the feather lasts you longer, and it's also going to help you use less oil in the long term, and so it's going to hold on to some of the oil that you just used from your last oiling, so you don't have to use as much the next time around. So oiling the bore of your oboe, that's always the best advice I can give to somebody. As I said, if you do it right, you're not going to over apply it, you're not going to ruin anything, but doing it too little or not doing it at all, and you just risk running into things like cracks. So humidification is the other thing that we recommend a lot. Keeping a relative humidity, because again, this wood is used to getting, water in it, and when it was a live piece of wood, it had water going through it, and so it is natural that it wants to absorb and release moisture. It's what we call hygroscopic. Now, when you play, you're putting that 100-degree steam into it, but when you're not, it's drying out, and so that's quite a massive shift. It's kind of like going into the rainforest and then going to Vegas, and then to the rainforest and back to Vegas. And so your oboe is going through quite a bit of shock. And so one of the things that we recommend is proper humidification inside of a case. The easiest way to do that is with a water-based humidifier. We get these from a company called Humistat, and they're just a little reservoir where you can store a decent amount of water, and there's a little guide so you can dial it down. And even if you live in a damp climate, it's good to have a relative baseline humidity inside your case so that as the humidity changes throughout the day, through the season, your instrument isn't going through that same shock.
Right.
The other thing that we see some companies do, and this is a newer one, is these two-way humidification packs. So this is from a company called Oboe, and they sell two-way humidifiers. The idea is that not only will it give you humidity, but if it's over-humidified, it will pull it back in.
This is pretty nifty.
This is. The downside of these is finding a place to fit it inside your case.
Yeah.
Because this is kind of big. Now, they make smaller ones, but as a general rule, the bigger ones are more effective. And they've got a lot of different types. Like this one is a 49% relative humidity, and it's what's called a high absorption model. So if you live in a very moist climate, it will have a higher rate of absorbing moisture than it does releasing moisture. So if you're in an area that is 60% relative humidity all the time, this will lower it down to the 49 relatively in that range, but it'll also still bring up humidity when necessary.